This is Barry Zalma speaking for Claim School Incorporated with another true crime story of insurance fraud. This one, called Susie's Blackened Kitchen, is a video prepared so you can learn how insurance fraud is perpetrated and what is necessary to defeat or deter insurance fraud. This video blog of true crime stories of insurance fraud with the names and places changed to protect the guilty are based upon investigations conducted by me and fictionalized to create a learning environment for claims personnel, SIU investigators, insurers, police, and lawyers better understand insurance fraud and weapons that can be used to deter or defeat a fraudulent insurance claim. Aunt Susie had been in the restaurant business all her life. She worked with chains like Denny's and Stuckey's. She was a good cook. She knew everything there was to know about the restaurant business. She could manage people. She could train waitresses, waiters, busboys, cooks, and dishwashers. She had done it all, and she knew how to teach others to do it. Aunt Susie's dream was to own her own restaurant. She was sure she could do better than any of the people she had ever worked for in the past. She knew she could cook better than any person who ever cooked at any of the restaurants she worked in. Good, wholesome food served fast and inexpensively would always find a clientele. She never made enough money to save so that she could buy her own restaurant. At age 50, she was still working for other people, managing a restaurant in the high desert around Lancaster, California. One of her regular breakfast customers was a handsome man of 60. He would eat breakfast alone at the counter every day at 7 a.m. sharp. Since her shift started at 7 a.m., they were together every morning. She would have his coffee ready in front of his favorite stool before he sat. The cook would start frying his eggs sunny side up as soon as he walked through the front door. When business was slow, as it was most mornings at 7 a.m., Aunt Susie would sit down with him and they would share conversation and their first coffee of the morning. They became friends. The old man had operated several Ford dealerships in the high desert area. He was a recent widower and lonely. Aunt Susie was divorced and all her children had grown and left home. The two lonely people became friends. Aunt Susie learned that her friend had sold his car dealerships because he had a heart attack and could not take the stress of operating one any longer. He was bored. He had a lot of money. He did not know how to spend. Aunt Susie told her about her dream of opening a restaurant called Aunt Susie's Kitchen. She would sell only home-cooked stock-type meals like pork chops and sweet yams, country fried steak and mashed potatoes, steak and baked potatoes, or beef stew and cornbread. The old man, with a car salesman's confidence he could sell anything to anyone, decided the opening of a restaurant was a wonderful idea. Aunt Susie would cook and train the staff, and the old man would supervise. His cardiologist would approve. A pizza parlor and a shopping center was advertising itself for sale. The location was good and most of the equipment could cook Aunt Susie's wholesome food. They only needed to buy a few extra pieces of equipment. With his negotiating skills, the old man wore down the owner of the pizza parlor and purchased his lease and equipment for less than its market value. Aunt Susie's Kitchen was born. They advertised on local radio and in the local weekly newspaper. Customers began to come, and it looked like the business was going to make money. Sit-down restaurants serving comfort food were rare in Lancaster. Restaurants with tablecloths were even rarer. Business was good for 6 months. Aunt Susie was happier than she had ever been in her life. Success was hers. Even better, she and the old man found they liked each other so much that they moved in together and were keeping house. Nothing could be better. After 6 months, the novelty of a sit-down comfort food restaurant wore off. Business began to drop. In 6 months, gross sales went down 10% each month. They were barely making enough to pay the help, the rent, and the rent on the small apartment they lived in. Aunt Susie and the old man tried everything. They even leased a roach coach, a mobile catering truck, and started selling Aunt Susie's special wholesome food at swap meets in the high desert. Aunt Susie's mobile kitchen reduced the slowdown in business, but it did not stop it. A sign in the shopping center announcing the opening of a new Denny's administered the final pain to Aunt Susie. She could not compete with a chain restaurant in the same center. The competition would destroy them. Aunt Susie didn't know what to do. The old man did. He told her not to worry. He would take care of everything. Since her birthday was coming up, he decided they would go to Las Vegas. He intended to blow what was left of their funds and have a good time. Since they closed Sundays, they would leave Saturday night and return Monday, letting the waitress open Monday morning. On Saturday morning, they arrived at the restaurant to find one of the plate glass windows broken. They called 2 glass companies, none of whom could come. The old man went to the local builder's emporium and he bought a single sheet of plywood and wired the plywood to the metal frame of the window, using a coat hanger through a hole he drilled through the plywood. Believing the restaurant was secure, they drove to Las Vegas that evening. They registered in a $1,200 a night suite at Caesar's Palace and had a wonderful time. They even soaked together in the indoor spa while drinking champagne on her birthday. Monday morning, just before they were to leave, they called the restaurant to speak with the waitress. They wanted to confirm that the restaurant opened properly. She didn't answer the phone at the restaurant. They called her at home. They thought the waitress had overslept. When the waitress answered, she was hysterical, crying, incoherent. By the time she calmed down, she could tell them that the restaurant burned. Someone had unhooked the plywood cover on the broken window, poured gasoline through the restaurant, and set it afire. The only reason the entire mall did not burn was because the sprinkler system put the fire out. The restaurant was a mess. They checked out of Caesar's Palace. They drove back to Lancaster. Everything the waitress had said was true. The restaurant was a loss. Although the equipment had not burned, smoke, soil, soot, and stench were everywhere. Aunt Susie's daughter from her first marriage had married what appeared to be a very wealthy man, and Aunt Susie didn't like him. Aunt Susie, having operated in the restaurant business all her life, knew many police officers to whom she had fed half-priced or free meals. Before her daughter married this wealthy man, she had her police friends check him out. She learned that his wealth came from his position as a major heroin dealer. She tried to talk her daughter out of marrying him. Her daughter would not listen. She had not spoken to her daughter, therefore, in 5 years. She refused to speak with her son-in-law. 6 months before the fire, Susie's daughter finally made contact and asked if Susie wanted to see her grandson. She hadn't even been told he was born. Aunt Susie, the daughter, and the grandson reconciled. Aunt Susie learned her son-in-law beat his wife and his child. Aunt Susie got her daughter a lawyer and filed divorce papers. Much to her shock, after the bruises faded, her daughter reconciled with her criminal husband. They blamed Aunt Susie for breaking up the marriage. The wall of silence raised again. The drug dealer had threatened to harm Aunt Susie. He was upset with her. He blamed her for breaking up his happy marriage. Even had an acquaintance who earned his money killing people. Telephone Aunt Susie and make a threat. Susie's first suspect for the fire was her son-in-law and his friend the hitman. When they arrived in Lancaster, she told the arson investigator of her suspicions. They verified that her son-in-law was a known drug dealer. They could not, however, connect him to the fire. The claim made to the insurance company resulted in a payment of the full limits of their policy, $150,000, twice their original investment in the restaurant, collected without work. Because of the fire, Aunt Susie could break her 5-year lease. She and the old man had a cushion to either live comfortably or open a new restaurant. Her son-in-law was contacted by the police, but there was no prosecution. Everyone knew the fire was an arson. There was no doubt about it. Tablecloths were found stretched throughout the restaurant and soaked with gasoline to spread the fire. One hung from the T-bar ceiling to help the fire climb into the ceiling area. If the automatic sprinkler system had been disconnected, the entire shopping center would have gone up in flames. Instead, all of the damage was done by the water. The fire department only found itself removing water since the sprinklers had put the fire out before they arrived. The odor of gasoline was so strong that the firefighters had to put fans in to blow the gasoline fumes out of the building. The fire cause and origin investigators knew that only one person had a motive to start the fire. Spite is a common motive for arson. The son-in-law was the first suspect. He was frank with the investigators, admitted hating his mother-in-law, but as long as she left him alone, he would leave her alone. He admitted he had threatened her, but only during the time when his wife and child had moved out at her instigation. He was a happily married man again. He could prove he was in Miami Beach with his family the week before and the week after the fire at Aunt Susie's kitchen. Her case was marked off as another unsolved arson. If the arson investigators had more time to investigate, if the insurance company's investigators were not overburdened, or if anyone had even tried, they would have learned what the old man told Susie 2 years later. He had broken out the window himself. He bought at the local Shell station a gallon of gas in a 1-gallon metal can. He told the attendant he needed it for his lawnmower. He then went down to the corner where the day laborers gathered every morning at 6 a.m. He selected the hungriest-looking laborer and offered him $500 to cause a fire at Aunt Susie's kitchen. He gave the laborer the gallon of gasoline. He explained in Spanglish, pidgin English mixed with pidgin Spanish, how to take the tablecloths off of each table and soak them in gasoline so the fire would spread throughout the small restaurant. He gave him a pair of wire cutters so he could cut the wire holding the plywood panel and enter the restaurant. He told him to do so after all the stores in the mall closed. The mall was locked up and dark. He told the laborer he would make sure that the broken window would be one on the side of the building away from the main thoroughfare. He gave him a $100 bill and told him that after the fire he would meet him at the corner and give him 4 more. Since it would take the laborer 1 month of hard work to make the same $500, he readily accepted. The day after the fire, the old man met the laborer at the same corner and he gave him 4 $100 bills. He suggested that the laborer move to a corner in Los Angeles, and the laborer agreed as they never saw each other again. Neither knew the other's name. No one was hurt, only the insurance company, and all the people who bought insurance from that company lost, and Lady Justice remained blindfolded. This video was adapted from my book Insurance Fraud Costs Everyone, which is available as both a Kindle book and a paperback from Amazon.com. Thank you for your attention.